Fat pig, take your food away. I hate you for being so fat.
Grace knew something had shifted the morning Samuel stopped saying her name. It started 3 years into their marriage after she'd gained weight from 2 miscarriages and the depression that followed. In their village of Okafir, where red dust coated everything and gossip traveled faster than rain, Samuel had begun his campaign of shame. "You this big woman," he'd call across their compound when neighbors could hear. "Can you even see your feet?" When they walked to the market together, he stayed 2 steps ahead, as if the distance could separate him from her shame. Old women would greet them, and he'd nod without slowing down, leaving Grace to smile and apologize for his hurry. Once, Mama Adana complimented Grace's new wrapper at the village square. "Ah, this color suits you well." Samuel laughed, sharp and cold. "You should see her in the morning." Grace laughed too, weak, hollow, because silence would mean trouble later, the kind that came with 3 days of his back turned to her in their narrow bed. The kitchen became her prison. Grace would spend hours preparing his favorite meals, jollof rice with chicken, a goosey soup thick with stockfish, pounded yams smooth as silk. She'd serve him carefully, watching his face for approval that never came. "No wonder you're like this," he'd say, watching her dish her own portion. "You people in food." If she reached for a second helping of anything, his hand would shoot out, not quite hitting, but blocking her. "Do you want to kill yourself?" He started locking the tin where she kept gari and ground nuts, pocketing the key. "It's for your own good," he'd say. But hunger doesn't sleep. Late at night, after he'd gone to drink palm wine with his friends, Grace would unwrap the small portions she'd hidden, a piece of plantain, some beans saved from lunch. She'd eat alone in the darkness of their outdoor kitchen, tears mixing with her food, the metal taste of shame coating her tongue. One night, he caught her, stood in the doorway watching her chew. "I knew it," he said, quietly, more dangerous than shouting. "You people can't control yourselves." Their bed, once a place of warmth, became a landscape of rejection. Samuel slept with his back turned, the ridge of his spine a wall between them. He'd started changing clothes in the storage room, as if her gaze alone might contaminate him. Grace tried, God knows she tried. One night, desperate to feel wanted, she reached for him, just a touch, her hand on his shoulder. He jerked away violently. "Don't suffocate me." Another night, braver or more foolish, she pressed closer, whispering his name. He sat up, turning on the kerosene lamp. In its flickering light, his face was cruel. "Do you know how you look?" She apologized for wanting her own husband, for having needs, for existing in a body he'd decided was unworthy. She cried into her pillow after he turned the lamp off, and he didn't ask why. The women started appearing in their compound 6 months later. First was Chioma, thin as a bamboo stick, with a laugh like breaking glass. Samuel brought her to help with record keeping for his trading business, though Grace kept all the books. "This is how a woman should look," he announced to no one in particular, standing too close to Chioma. He made Grace serve them both Zobo drinks, standing while they sat. Then came Blessing, then Gozi, then others whose names Grace stopped trying to remember. Each time, the same ritual, Samuel praising their figures, their discipline, their self-control. "You take care of yourself," he'd tell them loudly, his eyes sliding to Grace, not like some people. Once, Grace watched him stare at Blessing's body while the girl adjusted her wrapper, his smile open and shameless. Grace stood 3 feet away, invisible, swallowing pain like stones. When Grace finally broke, sobbing in their bedroom after he'd spent Sunday afternoon at Chioma's mother's compound, Samuel's response was rehearsed. "You're too sensitive, always making trouble out of nothing. If you looked better, I wouldn't behave like this. I didn't marry you to look like a joke in this village." Each word landed like a blow, and somehow, impossibly, she began to believe him. Perhaps if she was smaller, prettier, better, he would love her again. Perhaps this was her fault for losing the babies, for gaining weight, for failing to be enough. She started wearing her loosest wrappers, avoiding the small mirror they kept on the wall. She stopped going to village meetings where women gathered. Shame became a second skin. Grace's sister, Ada, visited from the city and saw everything in 3 days. "Leave him," she said. "Come stay with me." But Grace couldn't explain the chains that held her. The belief, bone deep, that no other man would want her. The memory of their first year, when Samuel had been kind, when he'd called her "my moon." The hope, foolish, persistent, that he might change back. The voice of her mother, long dead, saying, "Marriage is endurance, not happiness. You must bend." And underneath it all, the stubborn, stupid love that wouldn't die, that she carried like a burden too heavy to set down. The reckoning came on a Tuesday. Samuel woke up weak, his body trembling. By evening, rashes covered his chest. By the next morning, he couldn't hide the pain that twisted his face. The doctor at the health center, after tests sent to the city, confirmed what Samuel had tried to deny, an infection, sexually transmitted, caught from his wandering. The news spread through Okafor like wildfire. The same neighbors who'd watched his cruelty now whispered about divine justice. Samuel called them all. Chioma blocked his number after the first call. Grace saw him trying repeatedly, watched his face crumble when he realized. Blessing said, "I don't want drama," and hung up before he could finish speaking. Ngozi simply disappeared, moved back to her own village overnight. The women he'd paraded, praised, and prioritized vanished like smoke. Not one came to ask if he was well. Not one brought as much as a word of comfort. The compound fell silent except for the sound of suffering. Grace did everything. She bathed him when he couldn't stand, her hands gentle on the body that had rejected her. She changed his sheets when fever made him sweat through them. She walked 3 miles to the health center and back every other day for his medications. She slept on a mat beside his bed when the nights were worst, waking to give him water, to adjust his mosquito net, to hold the basin when he needed to vomit. Even when his body smelled of sickness, when he couldn't clean himself, she cleaned him, without complaint, without reproach. One evening, as she spooned broth into his mouth, he finally looked at her, really looked. "Why are you still here?" His voice was broken. "After everything." Grace set down the bowl. Her answer came quiet but clear. "Because I loved you when I didn't love myself, and love doesn't stop just because it's not returned." For the first time in years, Samuel couldn't meet her eyes, not because of her body, that body he'd mocked and rejected, but because she'd seen him at his lowest and hadn't left, because her love had proven stronger than his cruelty, because she'd shown him what he failed to be. The shame of it hollowed him out more than any infection could. Samuel recovered slowly. 3 months after the worst had passed, he could walk again, work again, face the village again. One morning, Grace packed her small bag, the same one she'd brought to his compound as a bride 7 years before. "Where are you going?" he asked, panic rising. "To my sister in the city." Her voice was steady. "I stayed while you were sick because that's who I am, but I won't stay to be hurt again." "Grace, please." "You taught me my worth by showing me I had none in your eyes, but caring for you taught me something else. I am stronger than your cruelty. I am more than you ever saw, and I deserve better than this." She walked out of the compound, past the neighbors who'd watched everything, past the gossips and the judgers. Samuel stood in the doorway, finally understanding what he'd lost, not when he'd shamed her, not when he'd betrayed her, but now, in this moment when she chose herself. The red dust rose around her feet as she walked toward the road that led out of Okafor. Behind her, a man learned too late that the weight she carried had been his cruelty, and the greatest strength was in setting it down. In the village, they say Grace never came back. They say she found work in the city, that she smiles now, that she wears colors again. They say Samuel never remarried, that he lives alone with his regrets. Some call it justice, others call it tragedy. Grace calls it freedom.